traveling to another train of thought, one not from this century. You are entering the paradigm shift.
Well, good morning. This is the paradigm shift, and it is June 5th, June. I'm still tired from working on nearly 24 hours the other day. It is June 5th, 2018. Welcome to the paradigm shift. If you were expecting to hear Suzanne, she will be on at 11 a.m. Eastern time today. We had a little schedule change. Different things were in play today, so we shifted everything back an hour. Suzanne will be live at 11 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Mountain, for those of you that live in her time zone. So we are live again. We will continue to be live at 11, so we have 2 hours of live shows. Less about 10 minutes where I'm going to cut out a little early so I can set up everything, because I do produce Suzanne's show. So I will cut out about quarter of or 10 of ish, somewhere in that neighborhood, and go set up everything for her show so that at 11 a.m. sharp, we will start the Wasatch Report live. And her guest today will be Brian Duff from Mind for Survival. For those of you from his web page, his Facebook page, he will be joining Suzanne. All right, let's see. Where do I want to start? Okay, let me start with, I was going to start somewhere else, but I'm going to start here. I'm going to play a media file from my congressman here in the East Coast, Representative Tom Reed, but I want to read a post I made to kind of set the table for where I'm going with this. On the 1st of June, I posted this on the Cerberus Facebook page. Watching people's posts on Facebook, I have come to the conclusion that the public school system has accomplished its intended goal. It has created good little status. Most of you that claim to be conservative are good with big government, just as long as it is the red team that is making the laws. So you see posts saying they should make a law about that video game that shows kids doing mass shootings in a school. A tasteless game, yes. Yet you say nothing about the game your kid plays that glorifies them shooting cops. You claim to be pro-life while not supporting an abolitionist in Oklahoma. You're okay with big government regulating the murder of babies, just as long as your team is the one that sets the rules. You're okay with your team allowing the president to commit acts of war without the constitutionally required declaration of war by Congress. Who cares about the Constitution as long as it is your guys ignoring it? You scream when the other team runs up the debt, yet say nothing when your team is going to add $1.4 trillion this year to the debt. Marxism is fine as long as it is your team that is in charge of the Marxism. That is what I posted on our Cerberus page on June 1st. Let me get everything back up here so I can see what's going on. There we go. So, having said that, I saw my good senator, and I use that word good very loosely, had posted a YouTube clip of him on a Fox show. Him supporting Trump's tariffs. And I posted on his page, name the article and section or the amendment that gives the president taxing or legislative powers. And then I said, of course, it's not there. So you see why I read that post I put on there, because just as long as it's your team doing it, it's okay. So let's listen to the good congressman, not so good, defend Trump usurping legislative power. Oh, I didn't close that out. This will work better. Maybe if it plays. Oh, that's the joy of producing your own show live.
The Republican Party has been split on tariffs for months. The issue was reportedly the reason that former White House economic advisor Gary Cohn resigned. GOP Congressman Tom Reed from New York is on the House Ways and Means Committee. He's confident that some of his fellow Republicans and also Democrats' dire predictions for the impact of the tariffs on the U.S. economy will not pan out. Congressman, welcome.
Well, thanks for having me on, Shannon.
Okay, so let's talk about some more of these objections. Again, we've heard them from both sides of the aisle. Tonight, though, top GOP Senator Orrin Hatch, who chairs the Senate Finance Committee, had this to say: "My position remains unchanged. Tariffs on steel and aluminum imports are a tax hike on Americans and will have damaging consequences for consumers, manufacturers, and workers." You think he has it wrong?
Well, no, I appreciate those comments, but I do appreciate what the president's doing here. He's bringing disruptive policies to our trade agenda to send the message to not only our allies, but most importantly to China, that we will follow through in putting American interests first. And that's a firm message that you haven't heard before on the trade agenda. And what I see out of this administration is exactly what they promised to do: disrupt the trade policy to put America interests in the same equal level playing field of fair trade, not trade that's at our cost.
Let me just stop it there, because the rest of it is just useless babble on his part. So he is good with the president setting tax policy, legislating from the Oval Office, decreeing legislation, all in the interest of negotiating fair trade agreements. Now, I have no problem with diplomacy because that is the purview of the president. He has the power to go and send diplomats to, and it was delegated to him to do this, to do diplomatic missions. So if he wanted to negotiate these trade agreements, that's perfectly fine. There is no problem with that. But to use legislative power to do that is wrong. The president is not the legislature. The Congress is the one that passes taxes. If they want these taxes, pass them, implement them. Then the president can go and negotiate. If that's the ultimate goal. But for him just to say, I'm going to arbitrarily pass taxes, I'm going to bypass the legislature just so I can go and do diplomatic things, is completely wrong. Be a diplomat, go and talk to these people, negotiate good deals. If you need tariffs, then you go to them. But here's the deal. I don't normally agree with Orrin Hatch. Very little do I agree with him. But in this case, he's correct. It is a tax on us because these products, when this tariff is added, will cost us more. So everything that's made with this steel, everything that's made with this aluminum, or everything else that they're talking he's going to tariff arbitrarily by his own power is going to cost us more. It's a tax on us. On top of that, do we not ever learn anything from history? Smoot-Hawley. What happened after Smoot-Hawley? We ended up in what was called the Great Depression. They committed an act of economic war around the world, and it had consequences. Did we not learn from the embargoes placed on Japan that led to Pearl Harbor, that led us into World War II? Do we not learn that economic war can lead to actual war, to actual guns being shot at one another, people dying? Do we not learn anything from history? The answer is obviously no, we don't. So, they're passing more taxes on us arbitrarily. Okay, what'll happen is the other side will cave, and then Trump will go, see, I'm such a wonderful guy. Completely disregarding the Constitution. But hey, who cares? Who cares about the Constitution? The Constitution only matters for the other side. Our side, when they're in charge, when the red team's in charge, who cares? You know, just forget it. It doesn't matter. Just like debts. Oh, when Obama raised the debt, oh my gosh, the world was ending. Trump and the Republicans are going to add 1.4 trillion this year. Crickets. Does anyone out there care? Obviously not. You constitutional conservatives, the only thing you're conserving is your Marxism. Let's move on to something else related to this, because it's right up this alley. I'm going to read a post from our good friend Mark Kreslins in a minute. Excuse me. But first, let's just back up. Again, most of you conservatives do not care about original intent. You do not care about the Constitution, as long as it's your team that's setting the rules or getting the big government. You don't care if Trump bypasses the Constitution, the legislative branch. You don't care about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights as they were intended to be. You just want your side to win. So this week, we had this ruling about this Colorado baker coming from the Supreme Court, and all you constitutional conservatives are all applauding and happy that the Supreme Court has dictated to all 320 million people in the 50 free and sovereign states that their ruling is the quote-unquote law of the land. And as I said in one of my posts, so we'll just go a little side here. I said, so that's how we end up with the law of the land about gay marriage or about the LGBT QRNLMNSNOP, whatever the heck all the words are now, about men in women's bathrooms and locker rooms. But that's, you know, you scream bloody murder about gay marriage and the LGBT men in bathrooms ruling from the federal government, from the oracles on the bench, the 10 or the 9 politically collected lawyers, as Mark Kreslin calls them, in black dresses. You scream bloody murder about that, yet you're all happy that these same 9 oracles passed this ruling about this baker in Colorado. You can't have it both ways. Either they have no authority to dictate Roe v. Wade, make law out of thin air, or law out of thin air on this baker, or law out of thin air on gay marriage, or whatever. But you can't have it both ways. It's just as wrong in each of those cases. And let me read, and I'm going to do this today because I've not done this before. I always tell people, go read the preamble. So what did I do today? So I printed it out. I'm going to actually read you the preamble to the Bill of Rights, and we'll find out why the framers added the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments. All right, so it's the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments of the Constitution as ratified by the states, December 15, 1791. Preamble. Congress of the United States begun and held at the city of New York on Wednesday, the 4th of March, 1789. The convention of a number of states having at the time of their adopting the Constitution expressed a desire. What did they desire? Here we go. This is very important, so listen very closely. So their desire, in order to prevent misconstruction or abuse of its powers, that further declaratory and restrictive clauses should be added, semicolon. So did they say I'm going to stop right there, and I'll go back and read the rest of it in just a second. Did they say that government is going to grant you these rights? These are your rights as we're going to give them to you. Absolutely not. So, I'm going to reread it. Process this thought. At the time of their adopting the Constitution, expressed a desire in order to prevent misconstruction or abuse of its powers that further declaratory and restrictive clauses should be added, and as extending the ground of public confidence in the government will best ensure the beneficent ends of its institution. Resolved by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled, 2/3 of both houses concurring that the following articles be proposed to the legislatures of the several states as amendments to the Constitution of the United States, all or any of which articles, when ratified by 3/4 of the said legislatures, to be valid to all intents and purposes as part of the said Constitution. Articles in addition to the amendments of the Constitution of the United States of America proposed by Congress and ratified by the legislatures of the several states pursuant to the 5th article of the Constitution, of the original Constitution. That's the preamble. So, why did the framers add these amendments? To prevent misconstruction and abuse of powers. They didn't give out rights. They didn't list rights. They listed restrictions on the general government. And if that wasn't clear enough, what are the first 5 words of the First Amendment? So they came off the preamble, and the very first 5 words. Amendment 1, Congress shall make no law. That's the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law. And if Suzanne was here, I would ask her in her lawyerly thing, they could have put a different word in there, and it would have changed the entire meaning. They could have put in there, Congress may make no law. Because then it would have been ambiguous. That some things they could make a law about, other things they couldn't make a law about. But what are those things that they can and can't, that they may? Then they could juggle this. Then they could make this ruling from the Supreme Court. It's may. Well, this one, they may be able to make this one. Oh, but they may not be able to make that one. No, they used a very definite word. Shall not. There is no wiggle room. Congress shall not make a law. So let's go back to this Colorado ruling. Did Congress make a law? Because this is a very important question. Did Congress make a law? The answer is obviously no. So this is a law by the state of Colorado. So, does the Supreme Court have any authority? Again, go to Article 3. Read Article 3. Does the Supreme Court have a veto power over the laws of the free and independent state? Was it granted anywhere in Article 3? The answer is no. All right, so let's just go to this post by our good friend Mark Kreslins, because he's going to hit it right on the head, right off the bat. Oh, and Jack Phillips does not have a First Amendment right against the Colorado Civil Rights Division. He does, however, have an Article 2, Section 4, religious freedom, quote unquote, rights in the Colorado State Constitution. Section 4. Religion. So I'm reading from the Colorado Constitution. This is quoted in Mark's post. Section 4. religious freedom, the free exercise and enjoyment of religious profession, speaking it out, and worship without discrimination shall forever be hereafter be granted, and no person shall be denied any civil or political right, privilege, or capacity on account of his opinions concerning religion, but the liberty of conscience hereby secured shall not be construed to dispense with oaths, affirmations, excuse acts of licentious or justified practices inconsistent with good order, peace, safety, and the safety of the state. No person shall be required to attend or support any ministry or place of worship, religious sect, or denomination against his consent, nor shall any preference be given by law to any religious denomination or mode of worship. So, in the Colorado Constitution, he is guaranteed that the state of Colorado cannot force him to do anything against his conscience. This is why it is. The Supreme Court has no standing here. The federal courts in Colorado or in that district, which district it is, I don't know which one it is, has no standing here because this is a state issue. The state constitution makes it very clear that this, what was it? The Colorado Civil Rights Division is in fact breaking its state constitution, enforcing them against their conscience, against their religious liberties as defended in their constitution. He should follow this all the way to the Colorado Supreme Court and made Article 2, Section 4 arguments. I've said this often many times with other things, namely the Second Amendment. When people are in Pennsylvania, they always say, well, I have a Second Amendment right. No, you don't. You have a Pennsylvania Constitution right that is defended in the Pennsylvania Constitution. That's the Constitution that matters here in Pennsylvania. This Colorado guy, the Constitution that matters to him is the Colorado Constitution. But yet we have happy people, happy, cheering on that the federal government is sticking their nose where it doesn't belong. They have no authority for. Yet again, here it is, whether it's the president breaking the Constitution to go into wars around the world unconstitutionally, or to set legislative or tariffs or taxes by his decree, as long as it's your Marxists in charge doing the things they're doing, it's okay. So when the Democrats are in charge, it's okay for them, their Marxists, to do their Marxist things. When the Republicans are in charge, the Republicans are happy for the Republican Marxists to do their Marxist things and enforce their Marxist ways and everyone else. I'll try to finish this off. Finish his post. I'll try not to make comment. I'll try to read the rest of the way through. He should follow this all the way to the Colorado Supreme Court and made Article 2, Section 4 arguments. Instead, someone filled his head with the U.S. Constitution, First Amendment argument, and off to the federal courts he ran. Not his fault, I suppose. Most people think the Supreme Court is the final arbiter. Heck, we believe this so much, we have an ongoing Holocaust totaling 60 million babies and counting. So I suppose I can't get on Mr. Phillips too much. And to add to that, yesterday, 99% of conservatives became constitutional scholars instead insisted that the Supreme Court had jurisdiction over this case. It does not. Even the most generous reading of Section 25 of the Judicial Act of 1789 limits the Supreme Court's intervention to the federal question jurisdiction, quote-unquote federal question. What exactly was the quote-unquote federal question in this case? Hint, there isn't one. Yet yesterday was yet another missed opportunity to reel in federal power. But as usual, it was missed, and now for the 1,000,000th time, the people have affirmed in their glee about this decision that the Supreme Court is the final arbiter. better hope you don't get in their crosshairs. If you do, you better hope they decide your fate the way you want them to. Didn't work out too well for Dred Scott, which was slavery. I'm not sure which this case is, but Mr. Korematsu, that might have been internment. I don't know. 60 million dead babies. That's Roe v. Wade. Mr. Kilo, Ms. Kilo, state sovereignty, the right not to buy health insurance, and on and on and on. Keep believing they are the final arbiter. That idea is working so well. Mr. Clesens is absolutely correct, and this is what Suzanne and I and others have been arguing for a number of days, that we have to start to understand what the Bill of Rights and the Constitution were intended to be. If we don't go back to the original intent, then we are sunk, because we will have Marxism shoved down our throats by the Republicans and the Democrats. Because again, as Mark's proven, as I've proven, as Suzanne proven a number of times, that conservatives aren't really conserving the Constitution or the original intent. They're conserving their brand of Marxism. So we have to go back and we have to understand original intent. And that's why we do what we do. That's why we talk about these things. We don't talk about this because we enjoy being yelled at. Suzanne posting that someone's calling her liberal again because she's pointing out the wrongness of the Colorado case. We're not liberal because in a sense, we're classical liberals. If you go back and you look at Jefferson and Madison, all them, they would be considered the classical liberals, because what is the root of liberal? And that came from liberty, because we defend liberty, the people's liberty. So what is the goal of the Constitution? Why do we have this Constitution? Is it to restrain the states? Because that's what it has been turned into. Is it to restrain the states? No. The states created this contract between at that time, 13 states, to create an agent of the states. And what is the Constitution? Is it the law of the land? Is it law? No, it's a contract between the states that set up a form of government. It is a blueprint for government. That's all it is. It's not the law of the land. It's not there to govern the states. But that's what we have today. They've turned it on its head, and they've made the Constitution a law that is pounded on the heads of the states to make them comply to the agent. So you go to a lawyer, you get an agent for you that is going to represent you. And so what would you do with that agent if he turned around and started beating you over the head with the contract to make you do what he wants as your agent? See, there's where the South comes in from the 1860s. They fired the agent. That's all they did. Secession is just firing the agent. Be honest with yourself right now. I'm going to ask you a question. Is the agent living up to the contract? Is the federal government living up to the contract? Because that is what a compact is. Today we would call them contracts. The states entered into a contract to form an agent to handle certain 18 limited things on behalf of the states so that it would be done in the best interest of all of them together. Is this agent living up to that contract? No. There's no discussion on this. The answer is no. You can say, well, maybe. No. This agent is not living up to the contract. So if he's not living up, this agent is not living up to this contract, what is our right as parties of the contract? There you go. You arrived at the right place, because that is ultimately our right. Now, Jefferson and Madison gave us the Virginia and Kentucky resolutions as a way, minus leaving or firing the arbiter, the federal government, minus firing them, leaving, seceding. They gave us a way for the states to respond to acts from this federal government. So when Colorado passed their marijuana laws, their recreational marijuana laws, they, in essence, followed what Jefferson and Madison had in the Virginia and Kentucky resolutions. They nullified federal law. That's if we're not going to secede, if we're not going to fire our agent in Washington, if the states aren't going to fire them, then they need to stand up and start acting as a sovereign, free, and independent state and start nullifying what they're doing. Either way, it falls on the states, on the people, because they are the power. Read the Declaration of Independence. Jefferson gave us the answer there. All right, I'm going to take a quick break. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to go to James Bovard's article that he wrote. It's a very good one. I'm sure Suzanne's going to come back to this Colorado ruling later. This is the Cerberus Radio Network. The paradigm shift is on on right now. Thank you for listening. We defend liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny.
Time. I'm pretty sure what's killing the crops is this Brondo stuff.
The Brondo's got what plants crave. It's got electrolytes.
So wait a minute. What you're saying is that you want us to put water on the crops?
Yes.
Water? Like out the toilet?
Well, I mean, it doesn't have to be out of the toilet, but yeah, that's the idea.
But Brondo's got what plants crave.
It's got electrolytes.
Okay, look. The plants aren't growing. So I'm pretty sure that the Brondo's not working. Now, I'm no botanist, but I do know that if you put water on plants, they grow.
Oh, well, I've never seen no plants grow out of no toilet.
Hey, that's good. You sure you ain't the smartest guy in the world?
Yeah.
Okay, look, you want to solve this problem. I want to get my pardon, so why don't we just try it, okay? And not worry about what plants crave.
Brondo's got what plants crave.
Yeah, it's got electrolytes.
What are electrolytes? Do you even know?
It's what they use to make Brondo.
Yeah, but why do they use them to make Brondo?
Because Brondo's got electrolytes.
Suzanne Sherman, shooting straight on everything from prepping to politics. The Wasatch Report, every Monday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern, on the Cerberus Radio Network. Cerberus Radio Network, protecting liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny.
Well, welcome back to the Paradigm Shift here on the Cerberus Radio Network. During that break, it said that Suzanne's on Monday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern. That is normally the time. And probably next Monday, she will be back in that time spot, unless there's a change because of other commitments. And then she may go to 11. But today she is on at 11 a.m. Eastern. I will be cutting out here shortly to set up everything to start producing her show. But I wanted to get to an article I found the other day. I found this on May 20. It was from May 26, 2018. The title is Freedom from Want is Slavery for All. This is from James Bovard. There's no R in there before the end. Bovard. He was a guest on Suzanne's show one time. A very, very good guest. And this is an excellent article. If you look it up, if you Google freedom, quote unquote, freedom from want is slavery, and then is slavery for all. And this starts off here. The Mises Institute reposted a 1999 article I wrote for Sheldon Richman at the Freeman on how government handouts can subvert freedom. That piece was adapted from my book, and I haven't read this book, but it is now on my reading list after finding this article. His book is called Freedom from Chains, The Rise of the State and the Demise of the Individual, and it's St. Martin's Press. Looking back on this 20 years later, I'm surprised at the widespread revival of socialist notions of freedom. So we'll go to the article now. Freedom from want is slavery for all. James Bovard. Sorry, James. If you're listening, I'm sorry. I keep putting an R there. James Bovard. Bovard. And I don't usually read articles through, and I'm not going to be able to read this whole thing in the short time I have. But I want to give you a feeling for where he's going with this. And it is a very, very good article. Please go find it and read it. Freedom from want, quote unquote, is one of the most frequently invoked notions of freedom in our time. However, it is a bogus freedom that politicians and socialists offer to lull people into accepting policies that destroy true freedom. Freedom from want has been most loudly advocated in this century by those who favored removing almost all limits on government. I mean, really, think about this. Just in that first paragraph. Today, our government, freedom from what? So what do? They give everything they want. LGBT, yeah, you can use whatever bathroom you want. Gay marriage, you can marry. We'll change the historical and the moral history of marriage from a man and a woman to whatever you want. Whatever you want's fine. You want to stop Christians from not baking a cake for you? Fine, we'll do it. We'll give you whatever we want. You want free stuff? Sure, we'll give you whatever you want. See how this whole idea, whatever you want, has removed all limits on power from government. So now, whatever you want is the answer that comes from everyone in Washington, D.C. Yeah, sure, whatever you want. Want to build more bombs for us? Sure, whatever you want. We'll go to more. We'll have more wars. We'll bomb Syria. We'll bomb Russians. We'll bomb Chinese. We'll bomb North Koreans. We'll bomb the world. We don't care. We'll build more bombs. Whatever you want. Freedom from want has been most loudly advocated in this century by those who favored removing almost all limits from government power. For example, Sidney and Beatrice Webb, two of the founders of British socialism and authors of The Soviet Union, A New Civilization? Asserted in 1836, personal freedom means, in effect, the powers of the individual to buy sufficient food, shelter, and clothing. The Webbs did not specify how many millions of people government should be permitted to kill in the name of freedom from want. So, you want to be free from want? Go ahead. We'll murder 60 million babies. Because that's basically what they did. You didn't want to want for anything. So this child might impact you and mean you can't do what you get what you want. So we'll murder the baby. So 60 million later, his article is proven correct. All right. The Webbs did not specify how many millions of people government should be permitted to kill in the name of, quote unquote, freedom from want. But during Stalin's bloodiest decade, they asserted that for government economic planning to succeed, public discussion must be, and this is a quote from the book, starting here, public discussion must be suspended between the promulgation of the decision and the accomplishment of the task, unquote. And that any criticism of the master plan should be treated as, quote, an act of disloyalty or even treachery for English speakers, unquote. For government to be able to liberate people with food and clothing, it must have the power to execute anyone who criticizes the official economic plan. After visiting the Ukraine, the Webbs endorsed Stalin's war on the kulaks, the least impoverished peasants, commenting that, quote, it must be recognized that the liquidation of the individual capitalist in agriculture had necessarily to be faced if the required increase of output was to be obtained, unquote. Equating liberty with the satisfactory living standards became far more common as the 20th century went on. Quote, real freedom means good wages, short hours, security in employment, good homes, and opportunity for leisure and recreation with family and friends, unquote, wrote Sir Oswald Mosley, the most prominent British supporter of Nazi Germany in his 1936 book, Fascism. James Gregor noted in his book, The Ideology of Fascism, that fascism aimed at, quote, restraints which foster the increased effective freedom of the individual, unquote. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt noted in 1937 that, quote, even some of our own people may wonder whether democracy can match this dictatorship in giving this generation the things it wants from government, unquote. University of Chicago professor Leslie Pape noted in 1941 that, quote, democracies readily admit the claims of totalitarian states to great achievements is the cause of positive freedom. British historian E. H. Carr, writing in 1951, observed that for the modern era, quote, freedoms from the economic constraints of want was clearly just as important as freedoms from the political constraints of kings and tyrants, unquote. Carr justified the array of economic controls in post-war Britain. Quote, the price of liberty is the restriction of liberty. The price of some liberty for all is the restriction of the greater liberty of some, unquote. However, with this standard, there is no limit to the amount of freedom that the government can destroy in the name of creating, quote, greater liberty for some. The British Labour government that Carr championed advanced freedom by conscripting labor to the coal mines and empowering the Ministry of Labour to direct workers to whatever employment was considered in the national interest, empowering over 10,000 government officials to carry out searches, including of private homes, without warrants, prohibiting restaurants from serving customers meals costing more than 5 shillings, less than $2 in 1947, and firing farmers and fining farmers who refuse to plant specific crops government demanded. That's about all the time I'm going to have for that article. But it gives you a little taste of where James Bovard was going with that article. It is such a good article. You please find it. Please read it. It is James Bovard, Freedom from Want, quote unquote, is slavery for all. Can you not see this at play in these United States today? As I quipped in his article, we have 60 million dead babies murdered because government allowed people to commit murder. Why? Because they wanted things. They were going to be impacted, and it was going to make it so they couldn't get what they want. We have corporations that want to make more weapons, so we have to give them what they want. So we'll bomb Pakistan, we'll bomb Syria, we'll bomb Libya, we'll bomb. We're not defending liberty. We're not defending freedom. We're making sure that somebody gets what they want. We'll increase welfare. We'll allow illegal immigrants to come in here. Why? So we can give them what they want. They're going to get free stuff. So the welfare rolls are going to grow. We're going to have illegal immigrants coming in, collecting welfare checks, housing, education, free medical. We have people here in these states that won't work because they want stuff. Give us stuff. So this government will steal from others, take away the liberty of others to give stuff to somebody else. Let's just be honest, folks. This government is a top-down Soviet-style government. It is nowhere near the blueprint of the 1780s, 1787, when it was ratified. A blueprint was set up for an agent to act on our behalf as the states. You're a citizen of the state you're in. Pennsylvania, Mark's in Oklahoma, Suzanne's in Utah. They're citizens of those states. Yet here we are. The agent has made his own rules. He's going to do what he wants to the liberty of the people, to give people what they want. All right. It's almost 10 of. I have to go, so I can get everything set up. In just 10 short minutes, Suzanne will be on at 11 a.m. Eastern. So please stay tuned to the Cerberus Radio Network and listen for Suzanne's show at 11. The Wasatch Report will be back on in just a few minutes. Thank you for listening to The Paradigm Shift here on the Cerberus Radio Network. I am Jeff Johnson, your host, defending liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny.